Welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chaney podcast. I am your host, Nathan Chaney, and we try to take a slightly different angle on conversations with people in supply chain where we really want to try to dig into who they are as a person, as a professional, and then as a practitioner of supply chain and logistics, and really kind of get to the root and the people that are behind the stories that go on within supply chain. So today, I'm really honored to have Erik Caldwell, the CEO of Century Supply Chain Solutions, on with me today. We are going to be seeing each other soon, I think, at TPM, but we wanted to hop on to a quick podcast and learn a little bit more about each other. Well, mostly I just want to learn more about Erik, I guess, and just unpack a little bit about what I heard, this concept that Century Supply Chain Solutions used to be the best kept secret, and I think we're trying to change that now. So Erik, without further ado, if I could hand the digital microphone over to you for a bit and let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, I would say the secret's out. We're growing and really serving some amazing customers, and super excited about that. So I know you talked to Richie, our Chief Commercial Officer, about that, and Richie and I went back to our XPO days together. We helped grow that company, and Century's just a rocket ship right now. It's so much fun. The other thing is, it's exciting to be here. As a supply chain professional, it's exciting times again. You know, who knew back in the COVID days and then the crazy post-COVID days that CEOs would spend more time with their supply chain leaders than they would with marketing or merchandising potentially. And it feels like this last year, the last 9 months at least, we've been seeing the same thing where supply chain is the focus of every company. We in the container management business are on the front lines of the global trade.
I'd like to dig into that more, but what I would like to kind of understand a little bit is how you got into supply chain kind of in the first place. It's usually not something that every kind of 5-year-old wakes up one day and says, I want to be a supply chain or logistics person. So kind of back us up and at kind of like, early days.
So to be fair, my daughter graduated from the Ohio State in supply chain.
Okay.
And she was a sophomore declaring her major. And I said, are you going to do something really exciting? She goes, yeah, Dad, I'm going to do supply chain. And I said, what, really? She goes, it's really cool now. It just wasn't cool when you did it. So I was like, okay, that's humbling. But excited for her, and she has the passion for it. But the easy answer is I love people. And I love solving things. And I think supply chain is where those things come together. Truth be told, my first job was in a warehouse. I was going to high school in Berlin, Germany. My father was a career military.
Okay.
And I was in high school in Berlin, and that was my first job as a freshman in high school. I was working in a medical warehouse at the local hospital, and fell in love with it, and fell in love with the people I got to work with in the warehouse. And then throughout my time in the military, although I was in operations, Cab Scout, armor officer, it seems like I always went back to supply chain, which is amazing because the military really runs on supply chain. And then coming out of the military, with DHL, it just kept it going and really enjoyed it. It's so meaningful. It's so important. And I love how genuine everyone is in the supply chain industry. People are so real here.
Because at the baseline, well, it's logic, it's logistics. So, it is very rational and there's rules around it. It's math and science a little bit. And also I think that, the basis of logistics and supply chain is like trucking, just moving stuff on wagons and stuff. And so it has a very tangible, relatable sort of at its base. And here lately, we've made it much more complex and nuanced, and innovation is really the key now. Could you talk a little bit about, your early days going to high school in Germany and kind of like what that first couple steps going out of high school after having that warehouse job, what did life look like there?
Yeah, so I was there the night the wall came down in Berlin.
Wow.
We were at high school dance my senior year. We ran into a classmate named Chip, and he had a twin brother named Dale, Chip and Dale. You can't make that up. We were at the local subway station, and he had mentioned that the wall was coming down. We didn't believe him. And then we ran into some other friends, and they confirmed it. So my best friends and I, who we just got back together in Berlin in November, all sons of military families, jumped on the subway and headed up to watch the wall come down that night. And I had planned to go to college back in Colorado, which is where I'd lived before we moved to Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And that night, things kind of changed for me. And I felt like you got the front row seat on the global stage and how big the world really was. And so I came back within a couple of weeks, traveled through Poland for Thanksgiving right after the wall came down. I came back and thought, you know what, I want to take a break from going to college, and I really want to join the military. Something I always wanted to do was serve. I wanted to get money for college to pay for that myself. But in reality was the world felt big, and I felt like going back to school in Colorado wasn't as exciting. And so I actually enlisted out of high school and became a demolitions expert on a sapper team. Ironically, went right back to Germany and then deployed to Desert Storm. You know, that was kind of how I started right out of high school, as a young private in the Army.
Wow.
And oddly enough, I got to my unit in Germany and I was all excited to be a demolitions expert and being out in the field. And I showed up and my first sergeant grabbed me as soon as I checked in. He said, "Caldwell, you're going to the supply room." I was like, "Well, I really want to be in a combat squad in the field." He goes, "No, you don't. You're going to go to the supply room." So I did that for a couple months, and then I volunteered to deploy to go to Desert Storm, and then came back. I got to be a team leader on a sapper squad, so I kind of jumped up there. And my company commander and first sergeant were really great guys, and they supported me. And at the end of the first year, they put in a packet for me to help me go to West Point. And so I got accepted to West Point and got to do that experience, and then served for 6 years as an Army officer on tanks and scout vehicles and doing heavy logistics as well, for those units.
I've had a number of veterans on and folks that work specifically with veterans to help transition into logistics and supply chain careers, civilian world, and it feels like a natural transition because to your point, like military is very much a big logistics and supply chain operation, so it feels like there's a pretty natural
80% of the military. If you look at the tooth to tail ratio, is what we would call it. About 80% of everyone is supporting, the combat. It's a pretty high ratio. You think of how many fighter pilots there are, fighter planes, and how many people go to support that. You think about every tank on the battlefield, and there's, typically 4 people behind that supporting that tank or that tank group. So 4x, the ratio. So yeah, I mean, logistics is a very intensive thing in the military. They're very good at it. And it translates really well because, again, you go back to, do you enjoy people? Do you enjoy leading and solving problems? Then logistics is pretty real. And it's also more real time. Like, it's not theoretical. We're doing things that make a difference pretty quickly. We're reacting different shifts. We're anticipating, kind of like war planning. You're trying to think ahead of what all the different contingencies and possible scenarios and how do I plan for that. So I've always found military people coming into supply chain is just it's an easy transition for sure.
Yeah. I've kind of drank in the Kool-Aid to the point where I feel like every company is a supply chain company, kind of like every military is a supply chain organization, sort of. I'm kind of curious, you mentioned that your daughter is there at the Ohio State and studying as well.
Ohio State, yeah, or they'll correct you.
What would, kind of looking back at your early days and kind of like what you're doing now, any words of advice you might give yourself, anything you would have done differently to kind of craft that path that you took to get to where you are today?
I always think of Steve Jobs in his Stanford address, and he says, when you're living it, it seems random. When you look back and you connect the dots, it all comes together. And so I've gotten to do every single job I've wanted to do, both in the military, running supply chain for a couple big companies, and then, being a third-party provider or a logistics company provider for customers. I've gotten to do everything I wanted to do. So I think some of that excitement probably showed up with my daughter. I would take her to distribution centers when I was running lens manufacturing for Ray-Ban and Oakley and Luxottica. We spent some time in the factory understanding 5S. I made her read the goal while she was in high school. So I might have had a little bit of influence on it.
I was building one of my first warehouses, walking out in amongst the racks and stuff with my kid who was just a few years old. And he was on a scooter, like scooting around out through the warehouse. And today he's 14, 15, and he wants to go into the medical field. So I did not have the same kind of...
Completely different. But I was kind of surprised. I thought she might have gone into marketing or brand management.
Mm-hmm.
But she got into procurement internship. She got into transportation billing her freshman year in college. And I said, well, so you have to like doing more routine? She's like, oh, no, Dad. Like, I'm doing all the billing they could never collect. Like right now I have to fax a guy in Mexico because he doesn't have a phone and he won't talk to me online. But I'm going to collect this money for the company. And she did, which is pretty cool because she was, like after, it was like her summer before her freshman year in college. So she was just out of high school tracking down people around the world to get invoices paid that were past due. So I think she got into it and just enjoyed it and then studied it and became a professional around it. So I'm proud of her. She's a kid. She's doing well.
Can you talk a little bit about and like maybe extract a couple nuggets of wisdom that you've uncovered in your transition from, being on the supply chain side of manufacturing and retailing and now kind of being on the logistics provider side? Well, back again, because you started there with DHL, I guess.
Yeah, I've gotten to do DHL, XPO, and now Century. So I've done 3 roles on that side. And even within XPO, we split off into GXO, the supply chain, contract logistics, and then I got to be president of the largest heavy last mile delivery provider in the world with RXO.
Yeah.
And so I got to run my own business there as well. It's interesting. I feel like a lot of what I do is from my time as a supply chain executive in these companies. And then how do you translate that into the seat I'm in here, take those experiences and understanding what other supply chain executives are facing at their company, and then how can Century come in and help support them and help solve things together? I think that broader perspective really matters to me. It's not, I understand you have challenges. It's, I've been in your shoes with you,
Right.
and understanding how the relationships within a company work as well. You always think of supply chain reports to the CEO or COO maybe, but in reality, the merchants and the planners and potentially store operations are your true customers within that company. And so at the end of the day, as a supply chain leader in a retail or a manufacturing company, that's who you're beholden to. Those are your internal stakeholders. If you can make the merchants and planners happy and the store operations happy, everything is easy. So a lot of what we focused on is, insight with visibility, having agility and being a trusted partner to help you build those relationships within your company.
Yeah, I like that story. I like that ability to be like, I've been in your shoes. It makes you such a credible expert in the room and partner for those folks. At the opening, I mentioned about how talking with Richie, he was kind of giving me some background here and how, Century Supply Chain Solutions had this moniker of kind of being the best kept secret, I guess. And so I would like to see this as part of that, that wave of coverage and just getting out there and getting y'all's name out there and making sure you're not a secret anymore. So can you give a little bit of background on the company, the business, and kind of like who your ideal customer is that you serve?
Yeah, I think if there's one thing the last few years has taught us, that speed without direction doesn't win. And that leaders in the companies we support really going forward need to combine early insights, built-in agility, and they need partners they can trust. And so our role at Century really is to deliver that edge and empowering our companies that we support, not just to manage shipments, not just to track visibility, but to truly orchestrate smart supply chains globally with a lot of resilience. Structured resilience.
Mm-hmm.
The heart of this is our Visive technology,
Mm-hmm.
which is the premier OCM platform.
Okay.
The other part of this is we have a world-class operations team. We have 60 offices operating in 70 countries around the world and delivering excellent execution and true focus on our customers. So that's our secret sauce. We always debate, are we a tech-enabled ops company? Or are we an ops-enabled tech company? And it's really the combination of the two that's our secret sauce and gives us such great power to help support our customers.
And those customers, what is your kind of portfolio? You've got these offices around the world, but kind of like at the baseline, what is your core kind of offerings that you bring to shippers and retailers?
Yeah, so once you're in Visive, we can do almost anything for you. Core is around OCM. We move about 1 million TEUs a year, so a substantial amount of volume in support of over about 150 customers, 135, 150 customers.
Mm-hmm.
And they range in different size, and they have different needs. But once you're in Visive, our OCM is the core. We do a lot of value-added services around labeling, e-docs, customs brokerage. We do global cross-docking around the world, and then we do transload in the U.S. and some brokerage as well. But the key is we give our customers insight into future events, and so we can work proactively to make sure everything flows smoothly. We have a lot of agility with our operations team, is that we can make changes on the fly to help support. Okay. Our technology is incredibly scalable. We have an amazing implementations team. We can go faster than any customer can. Mm-hmm. And then we deliver really great results to help them both save money, but also to build some structural resistance into their supply chains.
I'm interested to get your perspective on 2 topics. One, just the ocean freight market in general. Specialists in that area will know exactly what's going on, but kind of in my podcast, we kind of span the audience of everyone from trucking companies and brokers and also procurement, planning, everyone. So I'd love to give them like a quick kind of just 411 real quick on kind of what the state of the ocean freight market is looking like these days. And then I've got one more after that one.
Yeah. So if you look at ocean freight right now, there's excess capacity and the rates are really low. For us, it doesn't matter as much. We are more concerned on helping customers move containers accurately with visibility and predictive analytics. So the rate actually helps them save money on shipping, which is fantastic. Part of this is, LA came out and said they're down about 12% year on year right now for containers. So part of the rates, things are a little softer right now for sure. We're on the front edge of the global trade, and you can see and feel that. So that's where we're at. It's interesting in the container market or the global shipping market. I've done the whole gamut of supply chain, but focusing more on this end. I will tell you, compared to warehousing, contract logistics or warehousing, you make a plan to shift your network, drive transportation costs domestically, and open a new site. That's a 1 to 3 year planning window at least. With global trade, these things can change on the day or change in a week very quickly. Rates can change very quickly too. When you look at domestic transportation rates, and all the truckers will know we've been in a multi-year slump now. Truck rates will change 10, 25% in a shorter term basis, maybe 50% over a longer period of time. Global container rates can really trade by multiples. And if you think where we're at now, that's significantly less than it was just a few years ago. Right. And then when you think of COVID times, it's a tenth of what the COVID rates were. And so you have a lot more spikiness on the global logistics piece and trying to react to that, but more importantly, trying to be proactive about that.
Makes a lot of sense. You touched on kind of just cost of doing business and supply chains there. I'm curious, there's this pendulum that swings, I think, between cost and resilience and whatnot. And I think I'd be interested to get your perspective on kind of where the state of supply chain and your customers are between chasing, cost savings versus being resilient. Kind of where are we at on that pendulum swing?
Yeah, so I always say supply chain is like your spine. If you woke up this morning and your back didn't hurt, you might not have thought about it. I promise if you woke up and your back hurt, that's all you're going to think about. And so for the last 5 or 6 years, supply chains have really been the focus of that. My favorite is when more of a medium-sized company comes in that doesn't have an OCM provider, hasn't had a lot of depth here, and our supply chain engineers go in. We work hand in hand with the company to look at their network. We look at, their flows. How can we consolidate with the global cross dock? How do we get out of LCL, less the container loads where it's possible? How do we transload in the US? And importantly, how do we use eDocs and labeling to make sure everything flows down in the supply chain much quicker for them?
Last kind of maybe question on this particular line here, which is because of just the global dynamics of trade and commerce right now and that big T word tariffs and things. People have been trying to engineer their supply chains, I guess, a way to be resilient, but also to be able to kind of, bring and deliver products into the market at the lowest cost. So nearshoring and friendshoring and just trying to move around their factories. And you all are a little bit at the end of the bullwhip of that, I suppose, because you've got to react to wherever they're going to be sourcing from, producing, moving in from. How are you all seeing that from your side of the table?
Yeah, so we bring structured resilience. We are incredibly flexible. Visiv can move on a dime. And I think we have some pretty interesting insights. So when you look at one of the things that's happened in supply chain in the last year is within Visiv, China was 70% of our origin volume 3 years ago. A year ago, it was 66% of origin volume was coming from China. This year, it's down to about 55%. It hit a low point about 52%. That is a massive swing. Yeah. For supply chain sourcing. So every company talked for a long time, every company wanted to, diversify geographically on their sourcing. The T word pushed people there very quickly. I think Vietnam and Mexico reacted very quickly and benefited from the volume. We've opened a second office in Vietnam. We've opened another floor in the second office in Vietnam, and that office had already doubled in the previous 2 years. So we're seeing, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam up over 50% this year, seamlessly executing. Same thing with Indonesia, Jakarta, Malaysia. I think the limits right now for some of the sourcing that's moving into these other countries is probably structural. It's probably roads and ports and physical ability. But the people there are super passionate, super well-trained, and ready to take on the volume. So I think as you see these countries invest more in that infrastructure, you'll see more volume moving there. I would imagine that some volume will move back to China as things start to stabilize, but I don't think it's ever going back to 70% would be my guess. I think you'll probably end up in the high 50s, maybe low 60s. But that's a pretty big shift for China to, stop being the origin manufacturer, origin source for the volume and seeing it go to other countries like Vietnam and Mexico. I think Mexico can get ahead of this too with the nearshoring, and you'll see more investment in Mexico and probably more growth in Mexico.
I've been hearing stories about how the reduction in, sourcing from China has had an effect there on just the economy. But, they've kind of got to go to market and they find other customers that may not be in the U.S. And so do you all kind of play in that, wherever that volume is shifting out of China?
Yeah, so we're definitely seeing Canada pick up. Canada's been very robust. And then Europe. Europe for us has been growing. So I think Europe overall is up. But we've actually, grown with, 4 customers in Germany in the last 9 months. So we're seeing a lot of strong need in Europe with the global trade. Yeah. And as things got more complex, we're starting to see more European companies come to us, or American companies that were operating in Europe, give us more volume and transfer to us, just because the visibility and the relationship we have with our trusted ops team became that much more important for them in Europe.
Yeah. I was just about to go into that 2-letter AI word there and ask for a little bit of commentary there. So it's something that you've got built into Visive, and then do you use it internally within your own teams as well in some ways?
We do. It's built into Visive. I think in the last 3 years, every supply chain leader needed to, go back to the board, go back to the CEO, improve what they're doing in AI. The thing I love about Visive, it's built in there. Agentic AI is already built in. Our tools are amazing. Our customers give us really positive feedback on how far advanced we are. I would say if you don't think you're a year ahead of everyone else in AI, you got to be at least 2 years behind right now. and I know we're way ahead. You've interviewed Jim McCollum before. Mm-hmm. He is a genius as our CTO, CIO, and really launched AI early. It's a game changer. So we use it with our customers, their visibility. We use it with our tool and predictive analytics. And the other part is we use it for our tech team has really embraced it. And so our coding is faster, our testing is faster. We're able to implement and launch customers faster, leveraging AI in the coding process, which is pretty fascinating at how good that is.
I'm curious, kind of as we kind of wrap up things here on the episode, if you could share a little bit about just talent and supply chain. We talked about university earlier. AI is entering the picture and able to help a lot, but you also just need people who understand how supply chains work and have been in the trenches a bit. How are y'all kind of approaching the talent development and that side of the house there at Century?
Yeah, I mean, we still focus a lot on the soft skills. Within our leadership team and being leaders and placing a lot of emphasis on that. So I know AI is amazing, our technology is amazing, but at the end of the day, it comes down to leadership and having a really motivated team that wants to do great things for customers. So I would say number one is, we've still emphasized that as a hugely important piece to our learning and development. We have really prioritized some of the harder skills. And the nice thing is being in a supply chain company, you get to see a lot of patterns with different customers. And so you develop pattern recognition. So for our supply chain engineers or our tenured leaders across the globe, you develop these patterns, and it's how do I take these back to other customers to help them and give them insight and help them along the journey. And then the technical piece, there's a lot of math involved in supply chain. There's a lot of modeling. And so we do a lot around that. And then finally, the technology piece. Our technology team is constantly learning and growing with each other and benchmarking and learning from others. And so I think it comes across all 4 of those areas is where we really focused and invested. But I'll tell you, it starts with leadership. It starts with the softer skills of really having a team that's super passionate about what they want to do. You give us that, I think we can do almost anything.
Yeah. You can train, technical capabilities and all sorts of stuff. You can't train just gut leadership and passion and those soft skills, like you were saying.
Yeah. And they're wildly important. So I don't want that to get lost in the AI because it's our operators, it's our people. Right. And to be fair, 80% of our company resides in Asia. And every time I visit Asia, I'm on a call with them, I always remind them, like, the heart of this company lives in Asia. And I think that means a lot to them. Like, they take an incredible amount of pride in what they do and being the best at what they do in every country out there. But specifically our origin teams in Asia do just a fantastic job.
nice segue there, maybe to kind of wrapping this up is I'm going to see you at TPM here shortly, Trans-Pacific here. So bringing up that Asia bit. Can you talk a little bit about y'all's, your presence, at TPM, but, it's part of your go-to-market and marketing flow and just your conferences and how you're getting your name out there. But yeah, you all kind of had a tradition of hosting some events and kind of having a presence at TPM, I think.
Yeah, we're super excited about TPM, and we're super excited because it's a chance for us to one get in front of our customers, and that's incredibly important. Is that
Mhm.
that maintaining time with existing customers, and also gives us a chance to get in front of prospective new customers and explain how we're different, what we're doing, and how we would love to be part of their journey, and how we could do that together. So that's really an amazing experience because everyone will be there at the same time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it'll be my first time to TPM.
Mhm.
What I thought was really interesting was on the Sunday there is, a sailing regatta, a golf tournament, a pickleball tournament, and then a tour of the Port of Long Beach or something like that. And I don't know if you've got time for any of those, but if you had time for one of those, where would I find you?
I would go to the Century Cocktail Hour because it's always a highlight and a lot of fun.
Okay, well, looking forward to seeing you there then and kind of catching up and getting to meet you in person there at TPM. Before we wrap up, any last words, any stone that we didn't turn over here in this last 30 minutes or so?
No, Nathan, I just appreciate having some time and being an ambassador for Century. We're excited about what we're doing. We're excited about the industry. We're excited about where our customers are going and being part of their journey. We look forward to being at TPM and seeing everyone out there, and I look forward to meeting you in person as well. So thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
For sure. All right. Catch you later, Eric.